Hello and welcome to 21st Century. I'm Daljit Dhaliwal. The 15th to the 19th century saw a brutal trade in human beings. More than 15 million Africans were sold in the Americas as slaves. Now their ordeal is once again being remembered and honored.
It's very rare for somebody to be given an opportunity to work on something of such historical and cultural significance. I'm Rodney Leon. I'm an architect living and working here in the United States of America in New York City. In 2007, I was approached to attend a conference as a panelist after I had completed the African Burial Ground Memorial. One of the organizers had mentioned to me that folks at the United Nations were working on a resolution to have a memorial placed on the Plaza of the United Nations to commemorate the victims of slavery in this transatlantic slave trade. So I always kept in the back of my mind, wow, I can't wait for this to happen. And I would love to be one of the contestants. So it was years later that the competition was launched and we were able to then submit our ideas.
There were certain criteria that we felt were important, that were priority. It has to be the one that will really inspire thought-provoking ideas, make you step back and say, oh my God, is that really what happened? And how can we prevent this from happening again? You know, there has to be educational experience as well as a spiritual experience.
By unanimous decision of the judges, the memorial project proposal, The Arc of Return by Rodney Leon, is declared the winner of the competition.
I think we have something that at the end of the day will be befitting what we are trying to create, which is a sense of what millions of Africans, certainly those of us who are the descendants of Africans living outside of Africa in the diaspora, what we all went through.
As soon as we realized that we had won, we knew that there was going to be a lot of work that had to be done. We were pretty confident that we could make the March deadline for the unveiling ceremony. The door of no return is a very powerful image internationally for people going to Gorée Island in Senegal. People were held in these slave castles or prisons, awaiting to be taken out, stripped away from their lives and their families and everything they knew through this door of no return. It's such a powerful and iconic and tragic symbol. We felt that it would be very appropriate for us to come up with an idea about returning and giving people like a spiritual and an emotional and psychological opportunity to return back and to heal some of that transgenerational psychic experience that a lot of people have. So the Arc of Return was our attempt to develop a design which allows people to, if they're not able to physically return, at least they can acknowledge the fact that people had suffered great tragic losses and experiences in order to make it possible for our lives to be where we are today. This is one of the initial sketch models, essentially just folded out of a piece of cardboard. You know, the idea of it being a triangular shape, or a shape that's generated by triangles, essentially. The idea of it being kind of like also reminiscent of a kind of like a vessel or a ship. This is like actually like a three-dimensional rendering of the model concept that evolved. And these are some of like our original sketches of what we felt that the Arc of Return needed to kind of like represent. And these are some of the original inspirations, like the triangular slave trade maps, and these are some images of the hulls of slave ships themselves. We're also able to use the three-dimensional model to help us construct the steel frame and integrate them together so that any conflicts that might come around can be picked up before fabrication.
The gap that we're trying to close is approximately 500,000 US dollars. And I think we have enough time between now and the spring of next year to mobilize that amount of money.
$20,000 has just been donated, $60,000.
Thank you very much.
And it's been incremental, but it's actually been very successful so far. We went through a lot to try to find the right marble. This is one from Greece, which is probably the whitest marble you could probably find in the world. This is a very beautiful marble from Italy.
Like, let's say if I was to use that inside here.
We visited Danby, Vermont, and we looked at some of the marbles that they had over there.
We'll see when we can find a Montclair that works.
And then we did find a marble that had a quality of lightness to it in terms of like its veining. We were looking for something which had almost like a kind of like cloud-like quality to it.
No, you're going to see it. It's going to have those clouds you're looking for.
We wanted to make it feel like it was light, like it was almost going to like float away.
See all this in here? This is all going to become very prevalent.
Yeah,
all this area, like these are beautiful, by the way.
yeah, I mean, I think that this is like a good one, and it's probably some of the most unique marble you'll be able to find in the world. And that marble is the marble that we are using to fabricate the memorial, because not only is it reflective of what it is that we wanted aesthetically, but it's also locally fabricated, so it's going to be a lot easier for us to be able to ship it and to get access to it. So that saved us a lot of time and effort and probably a lot of cost as well. We have some artisans that have been hand carving and sculpting a figure that we call the Trinity Figure, that represents the spirit of the men, women, and children that died during the transatlantic slave trade, more specifically during the Middle Passage.
Wow.
This is it from here.
So this is some processes of actually the body in clay, and that figure has a hand that's reaching out to welcome people into the chamber. The whole entire body and robe portion is carved out of one solid block of white marble, 7 feet long by about 2 feet thick and about 2 feet wide. These artisans from Carrara, Italy, sculpted this beautiful flowing white robe over the figure that actually looks as if it's kind of like draped elegantly over the body, and if you touch it, it feels nice and smooth and soft. It actually looks like cloth. The elements of the body of the Trinity Figure are out of the black Zimbabwe granite. One of the things that people had asked us is like, well, why is the marble white? That somehow translates to some people that, okay, there's an absence of like the African presence within the memorial. And I think that one of the things that people most likely will see or understand that, this is more of a kind of like a spiritual space. The interaction of people passing through the memorial is one of the things that's going to initiate the flow of water. And when that contact occurs, the idea is that the presence of a figure allows a tear to come from the eye of the body. And that tear then generates a triangular waterfall that then fills two additional reflecting pools that are in the monument itself. And I think that'll allow people also to kind of like pause and see that they have the power to actually make a change. The Trinity Figure was going to be accompanied by an image of a plan of a slave ship that shows how all the slaves were held below deck and how tight and confined those spaces were that they had to experience for months and months while they were journeying across the Atlantic Ocean during the Middle Passage. And I think that that graphic is going to be a very powerful reminder of like what the experience was like.
Ladies and gentlemen, as chairman of the Permanent Memorial Committee and permanent representative of Jamaica, it gives me great pleasure to present to you for the very first time the Ark of Return. What a glorious moment, ladies and gentlemen.
I am first generation American born of Haitian parents, and this is sort of like a responsibility to kind of like carry on being able to communicate the legacy and the history of people that struggled for freedom and are continually struggling for freedom in very adverse circumstances. I think that the memorial, depending upon how it is used, can act as a kind of a rallying point or a gathering place for freedom. A lot of the tragedies that most of us think were eliminated, but quite honestly, there's probably a lot more slavery and a lot more tragedy in our current political and social conditions throughout the world than there were during the traditional transatlantic slave trade. We hope that the Ark of Return will also speak as a kind of like a beacon of hope for those who are currently experiencing that, and those who are the leaders of the world who come to the United Nations will be reminded of their role and their responsibility, lest we forget and future generations continue to repeat the same mistakes. A project like this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. It's been an incredible journey.